Hey, what's going on? This is Felix, also known as Enoch, student at Absolute Bible Truth, and I'd like to give a big shout out to Sal Showtime and Debate Talk for You. I'm a frequent listener, been listening since season one. Keep doing your thing, and for everybody out there who can hear this, send in your donations so Debate Talk for You could go on for a long time. All right, y'all. Peace.
Hey, what's going on, family? How you guys doing? Welcome to another show. You're now listening to the Debate Talk for You Summer Special. Of course, I'm your host, Sal Showtime, and we are back with another classic show for you guys. Well, the final week for the Debate Talk for You Summer Special. We had a lot of classic content last week, and of course, we're going to go out with a bang this week with a few more shows. I think we have one tomorrow, and actually on Friday, no, actually on Monday, is going to be the final show for the Debate Talk View Summer Special. So, we appreciate the support of the people out there. If you missed any part of this Debate Talk View Summer Special, you can always go back to the archives and go check it out. Go to the YouTube channel and type in the search box Debate Talk View. Of course, we're on iTunes in the podcast section. All you got to do in the search box again is type in Debate Talk for You, Debate Talk, the number 4, and letter U, and check out the archives. And of course, we're on Blog Talk Radio. That's our home, Blog Talk Radio. That's www.blogtalkradio.com/Debate Talk for You. This is the Roundtable episode 37, family. Once again, it's episode 37. This is African Hebrew Israelite Controversy Part 2. That's right. This is actually part 2. So part 1 was definitely a classic. We had a lot of great information that came out during that particular roundtable. What happens in the roundtable, for those that are new, we invite like several special guests on a panel, and each person will have like 6 minutes to say their piece, whatever it may be, and then we go around, to each person over and over and over again, to hear what they got to say. And of course, sometimes we bring up different questions on the table to hear what others has to say. And of course, we open up the phone lines for the audience out there, to chime in. Again, that number 319-527-6239. That's for the audience. If you want to chime in, you got any questions or comments, feel free to press number 1, and we'll add you in the conversation. We're just waiting for more of the special guests to join us right here on Debate Talk Radio. And once we get, more people here, that's supposed to be, on the panel, then we get this thing started. By the way, family, the chat room is officially open, y'all. The chat room is officially open. If you want to get access to the chat room, you have to go directly to the website. Again, www.blogtalkradio.com/Debate Talk for You. Click on this show. The Roundtable episode 37, and when you scroll down at the bottom, you're going to see a little box there where you can interact with me or anyone that's inside the chat room. What I'm going to do is go down the line and introduce the people that's already here right now, and then hopefully everybody else will come in as we go along, inviting everybody that's on the panel. But let's go to the first person. Let's go to 916. Introduce yourself to the world. Who am I speaking to?
Hey, what's going on? This is Brother Duane. It's a blessing to be on the show, Sal. Great work that you're doing for our people, and even the Gentiles are able to listen in and hear the truth. So, it's a blessing to be here. I run the website, Biblical Hebrew Israelite Awakening. We have a Facebook page as well, and the primary task for us is to awaken our Hebrew people as to who they are from America and around the world. Okay. We do a lot of research, going into DNA, going to the historical archives, various libraries, encyclopedias of different nationalities and ethnicities where our people have been found. And bottom line is exposing the truth of who we are as a people, and as well as waking up the Christian church that they got to stop this nonsense that they're doing when it comes to following after the Roman Catholic Church, the doctrines of the Ashkenazi Jew, and coming back to the truth of who we are as a people and who they are in Torah in Christ. So that's where I'm at.
All right, so we have Duane Harris. Once again, it's his first time here on Debate Talk Radio. What made you have interest in this particular title, African Hebrew Israelites, to join us? Talk about that.
So I was talking with Brother Akwete, Rabbi Akwete, and we've been chatting the past week and stuff like that. And I know that there's a rift for a lot of black people, specifically in America. There's a hurt, there's a pain, there's confusion, there's misunderstanding, there's anger and bitterness because the feeling of why didn't they come and get us? If they knew who we were or if they knew who they were, how come nobody came to get us? We don't see ourselves as being the children of African Hebrews, of Bantu Hebrew Africans. We don't see ourselves that way. We've been blinded by a lot of hurt and pain, a lot of lies and deception. The Gentile nations all knew who we were from the very beginning. The Ashkenazi Jews knew who we were even back when it came down to the sub-Saharan Arab slave trade. They were a part of that as well. You know what I'm saying? So the Gentile world colluded together. They knew who we were to suppress us, to destroy us, to separate us, to get us to hate and fight amongst ourselves. And so now here we are with this awakening that Almighty Yah has brought upon us at this day and time and age. Many of us are awakening to the truth, and yet there's division on multiple levels. You got camps on camps and fighting. You got camps that are embracing the Ashkenazi, Talmudic, religion and faith and background, and just basically putting a black face to the Talmudism, okay? And then you have those others that are basically, I don't want nothing to do with the Africans. It's only about us. They'd rather claim other people, okay, that aren't even biblical Hebrew by blood. They'd rather claim them than folks back in Africa that we descend from. So, ultimately, even if I disagree with my brothers, they can be on some other stuff. I got love for my brothers and my sisters, and it's just time to dialogue and have a good conversation to kind of bring some enlightenment on this topic.
All right. Duane bringing it first time here on Debate Talk for you, man. We appreciate you. We're going to hear more from you, of course, as we go along in the show. All right, so let's go to the next special guest. My next special guest was actually on part one. If you missed part one, go to our archives. Make sure you go check it out. It's a very powerful dialogue. This is Moray Doc. Welcome to the show.
First and foremost, honor and praise to the Most High God, King of heaven and earth. Yehoshua is his name. Even the God of our forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Israel. Giving thanks to the brother Sal Showtime for bringing me on the show. Once again, my name is Mori Yitzhak Ben Dan Ben Yisrael. I am one of the teachers of Beit DCB. I'm also a member of the organization Sadiq. We are Hebrew Israelites, Torah-based only, teaching the world and enlightening the world to who we are, and most importantly, the way that we should serve him. Definitely interested in the topic this week because, as we said last week, as a people, we've been suffering from an identity crisis for years. So this topic is important for our people so that we stop and understand and stop the millennial curse of calling ourselves by names other than a child of God. It's time for us to understand not to identify ourselves by a continent. It's time for us to understand not to identify ourselves by people who branded us, but it's time for us to understand that we should identify ourselves by the way God called us. And God called us Hebrews, and God called us Yisrael. Our name was changed to Yisrael. So I want us to understand the position that I hold. I have nothing against people having their own identity. If you're from another nation, then by all means, call yourself by the name of your people. But my focus and my interest is on my people who have forgotten their name. My focus and my interest is on my people who no longer call themselves by the name of Israel. And so hopefully by this conversation we'll have today, it will bring out more enlightenment to our people who've been calling themselves things other than African, black, and those bywords and those proverbs that it speaks of in Deuteronomy 28. And we could begin to shed this curse and begin to rise again as a nation and get back to serving God. Hallelujah. I'm done, my brother.
All right. Once again, it's Debate Talk for You, the Roundtable, episode 37. We're still awaiting a few special guests that's supposed to be joining us, of course, as the show go along. I'm going to be in the background reaching out. But let's go to the next person. Let's go to JC. He was here for part 1 as well. JC, welcome to the show.
Peace. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you loud and clear, man. What's going on?
Okay. Nothing much, man, chilling. First of all, thank you for having me on the show again. My thing is, I don't really, when it comes to dealing with who is and who isn't an Israelite, it's not a spiritual thing to me. It's not a spiritual thing to me. Like, everybody have their own spiritual doctrines and beliefs. That's up to them. I don't debate that. So I deal with the facts, the history. My primary focus is putting the Hebraic traditions back into their original indigenous African context. And I do that via comparative linguistics and comparative cultural studies. And that's the only way that we're going to get any clarity of what the people who we call the Hebrew Israelites, how they actually worship and live day-to-day life. That's the only way we're going to get it the right way. I know people call themselves Hebrew Israelites, call themselves Hebrews, call themselves Jews, but if they know the history of the Israelites, at no given time did the Israelites ever follow one uniform way of anything. Never. When you say you're Hebrew Israelite, are you practicing pre-exilic customs? Are you practicing post-exilic customs? Are you practicing? It's so much more than what we been pigeonholed and boxed in to believe. So that's why I come in at. I'm doing the comparative culture studies to the cultures that were around the Hebrews and the cultures who we came from. Because the Hebrew people were a mixed multitude of different Africans. You had Libyans among them, you had Canaanites among them, you had Egyptians among them, you had Ethiopians, you had Nubians. So it's more than what we make it. It's bigger than that.
All right, that's Brother JC right here on Debate Talk Radio. We actually, I actually got a message from Makwete. He's having difficulties calling in, so he's actually going to go on a 3-way to try to call Duane to get in. Also, I'm reaching out to the priest Danielle and, of course, Ron Devon Prospect supposed to be here, right here on Debate Talk Radio. But we're going to get this thing started and jump right into it. In the meantime, of course, like I said, I'm going to be in the background trying to reach out to people, make sure they come in, to get here. But you know what? Let's start off with you, JC, because I know that you said that, there's a couple of things that you want to bring out that you didn't get a chance to bring out. So I'm going to give you the floor. Again, we're going to go around. Everybody's going to have 6 minutes to avoid long-windedness. Everybody's going to have 6 minutes to get it in and, say their piece. And once we get to the 2-minute mark, you're going to hear this sound. And once you hear that sound, it means there's only 2 minutes left of your time. All right, JC, you can start off and go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I was saying before, my mission is to put the ancient Hebraic culture back into its indigenous African context. That's my mission. I'm talking pre-exilic Israelites. A lot of Hebrews don't understand that even within Israel, you had certain kings who came and they did what scholars called reform. They had a cultural reform and they had a spiritual reform of the people, right? Also, a lot of people don't understand that the upper class, the elites, the kings, the queens, the royal family of Israelites, they had a spiritual system that was outside of what the masses did. You had a national deity, and you also had what scholars called folk religion or the indigenous religion. They weren't one and the same. And at one time, both coexisted without any strife or beef. It wasn't until reformist kings like Hezekiah and Josiah, Jehu, to name a few, came in and they changed things. So, and they did that basically to carve out a national identity that was separate from everybody else. And they have every right to do that. That's cool. But you can't do it under the pretext of using the Most High as a pit bull or a boogeyman to scare people into following the way you want them to follow. And that's what they did. And that's the issue I have with that. But when it comes to pre-exilic, pre-reformist Israelite culture, it's definitely an indigenous African culture. Every name you can think of, every title you can think of for God, the Most High, Yahweh, 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 however you want to say it, can be found indigenous to West Africa. Meaning, when I say indigenous to West Africa, meaning nobody came and brought that there. Even the name El is indigenous to West Africa. El Shaddai is indigenous to West Africa. El Elyon is indigenous to West Africa. Now, when you do comparative cultural studies, it's to reclaim or get a better understanding of how they worship and how they followed the culture back then. And luckily for us, we have a living example of how they follow the culture true in West Africa still today. We don't have to make things up. We don't have to butcher the scriptures. We don't have to, use biblical hermeneutics. All we need is right there for us. That's it. That's it. Like even down to when you look at the Yoruba people, they have a priesthood. They have a Babalawo, right? If you look at the etymology for the word Babalawo, you will see the exact same etymology for what in Hebrew we have as Levi. Exact same etymology. When you look at the cognate roots and the pronouns and the verbs and you look at the structure of the word, it's the exact same word. Even the word rabbi. I know a lot of Hebrews don't like the word rabbi, but even the word rabbi, you go to West Africa, among the Yoruba, they say rabibi. That's indigenous to West Africa. Exact same word, exact same office, point for point. Even divination. Hebrews don't like divination. Oh my God, it's witchcraft. Divination's in the Bible. No Levite, nobody in the priesthood, no king ever did anything without consulting divination first. What's divination in the Bible? When they were casting lots. Looking for a yes, or by casting lots, they might have used goat knuckles, they might have used rocks, they might use stones, cowrie shells to get a yes or a no answer for a question they have to the Most High. They're cast the shells. They might get a yes or no answer. I know based on that answer, that's how they move. So that's not. It's so much more that I could say, but it's crazy. It's crazy.
All right, family. Once again, it's the Roundtable episode 37. African Hebrew Israelites controversies. This is part 2 of that series, actually, African Hebrew Israelite controversy part 2. The number is 319-527-6239. Again, we're just awaiting more special guests to call in, but we, the ones that are already here, we're going to let them chime in. Let's go to Duane Harris. Duane Harris, you have 6 minutes, brother. You can go ahead.
What's going on, Sal? Hey, thank you. Also, I want to let you know that I do have Brother Akwete here with me. Rabbi Akwete, he's online with me. So maybe we can give him an introduction first, and then I can start.
Okay, yeah, what's going on, Akwete? How you doing?
I'm well, Sal. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Let people know, since part 1, what's been the feedback? Go ahead.
Well, I've got a lot of emails and messages on Facebook, and it looks like people want to know more, and that's how it's supposed to be. There's nothing like having, if I can call it, authentic, when we say eyewitness report. You would rather take the eyewitness report than what you read from textbooks and stuff. So it's been pretty good, and like I always say, check everything that is said. Check it for yourself. So I'm looking forward to today.
All right, most definitely. Of course, we're going to hear from Akwete a little later on. But again, I'm going to start off with Duane Harris. I'm going to give you 6 minutes, my brother. Go ahead.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, so I want to keep this short, sweet, and concise. Ultimately, we're talking about the awakening of the Hebrew people, not in America, but worldwide. Okay? In West Africa. It does reside currently in, South Africa, in the Bantu areas. Various tribes, various Hebraic people that are there with this rich history. Okay? And so here's the thing I've been finding out just the past few weeks of talking to people that are in Africa and that are here in the United States is that there's a lot of deception and abuse that we have to overcome. I've talked to Africans that have the oral tradition. They have the tradition that was passed down from their fathers and their forefathers, their grandparents, but has been forgotten. Or in some cases, those forefathers have not passed down that information because we've been suppressed and oppressed for over 400-something years, and even further. Really, I mean, if you stack it all up, it's been almost probably a little over 1,000 years of oppression of some form. And so now what it ultimately comes down to, and I hope we bring out during this discussion, is that my Hebrew people of the 12 tribes all over this earth that have Hebraic blood running through their veins, it's time to wake up. It's time to put down selfish and self-centered ambitions, because many of us that claim to be woke are really still asleep because they want to cling to their little corner of the Hebraic truth and make themselves more than what they are, when we are sons and daughters of the Most High Yah. We are a royal priesthood, and we need to get educated in the truth of who we are, so that as we go and we walk and we live out our life, wherever we may be, we walk in authority as a Hebrew son or daughter, not as a black person, not as a Abid, as a Hebrew. That's the important for us. I even tell my children, my son is almost 7 years old. My daughter's going to be almost 11 years old. They know that they are Hebrew Israelite children. They know that Bible that they have in their room is their history book. And so it's important for us all over the world to come together united as one people, as a Hebraic people, to put away colorism. You're not black enough. You're too light. You're too whatever. Put away ethnic bashing of tribal areas, because that's what happened in Africa. You had many tribes, some of which did sell their brother and sister into slavery for some dollars. They sold their brothers and sisters, didn't know that they were Hebrews. They sold them for booze guns, trinkets. And it's something where we as a people have to put away that bitterness, that anger, that hatred that we have in our heart that's been inflicted on us, because by nature, we all know it, we are a loving, caring people. We're full of joy and light. That's why the entire world can't stay away from us. That's why our oppressors can't stay away from us. I've studied the history. I am a professional researcher and analyst on various topics. I'm also a forensic scientist when it comes to computer science. And I've turned my skill set towards our history. In closing, I found that our oppressor, from the time they grabbed hold to our Hebraic truth, they converted to our faith of who we are. And they oppressed us from generation to generation, and they always stay close by. So as a people, we have to unite as people, put away tribal differences, put away all the various differences, and come together in Christ and Torah. That's it.
All right, Duane, just letting you know, at some points, I don't know if you're on Bluetooth, but sometimes, you come in and broke it up a little bit. So maybe you want to adjust that, or maybe, I don't know if you're listening via computer, just lower the speaker down. You come in and kind of break it up at some point. So I guess when we come back to you, you can make that adjustment. Again, this is the Roundtable episode 37, family. We want to hear from y'all as well. Y'all know the number, now 319-527-6239. But now let's go to Morey Yefdoc. Hear some words from the brother. Let's go to him right now. 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, once again, honor and praise to the Most High God. I'm listening to what's happening, but there's something I want the listening audience to understand. We are people that are constantly under attack, and that has not changed. From captivity to captivity, they have changed our name. In these here Americas, they've changed our name on those slave ships. When we were in Africa, in a nation called Egypt, they changed our names. When we were in Babylon, amongst Babylonians, they changed our names. Yet we don't ask ourselves the question, why? Yet we don't ask ourselves the question, why do they want to keep us confused? Why do they like us better calling ourselves something other than actually who we are? And what was the point of them doing that? God told us, and he made it understood, that there's power in the names that we hold. He told the man Jacob, you have now struggled with God and man, and therefore your name should be Israel. So what am I sitting down and I'm saying here this day? In order for us to get back to God, we have to understand what we were cursed to become. We were cursed to serve another people, and that's why our name came off of us. Nothing more, nothing less. When we turned our back on God, he took his name off of us. So on the continent of Africa, it's nothing better than for our slave captives. It's nothing better than those who torment us for us to believe that we're a melting pot. Yeah, let's all say, we're just one and that's it. Why? Because when you do that, you cannot identify the blessed people of God. When you do that, you no longer take on the name of being a child of God. And so what I'm sitting here saying now is, what nation in this world doesn't identify themselves? We're the only people who have changed our names. You don't sit back and see Europeans say, oh, yes, we're all Europeans and let's show some love. Doesn't happen. You don't see people on the continent of Asia, because Africa's a continent, sit down saying, oh, yes, we're all Asians, forget about this name stuff. They all identify themselves. South America, noted. Europe, noted. Asia, noted. You don't hear Koreans stop and saying, I'm a Korean Japanese. They go, no, I'm a Korean, and that's a Japanese person, though they occupy the same continent. So what I want us to understand about Africa is Africa's a continent. Israel is on the continent of Africa. Egypt is on the continent of Africa. Ethiopia is on the continent of Africa. Ghana is on the continent of Africa. Different nations occupying the same continent. Doesn't necessarily mean I hate you because we share a continent, but let me be me and you be you. I have my own name. What is the purpose, or is there a greater agenda? Is there a more hidden agenda? Is there a global conspiracy to keep us confused so we don't rise back to who we are? And when we don't do that, when we sit down and we teach each other to stop and think it's okay to stop and believe it's okay to call yourself something than who you are, then yeah, we've been bamboozled. We've been hoodwinked. They caused us to drink the Kool-Aid to stop and believe, yeah, no, all of this is all right. It's the same way they stopped and tried to cause us to believe that no matter who you call upon as God, it's all just one. And so I say for us as a people, we've never believed that. When we landed on this shore, we had a God that we called on, and he had one name. And when we landed on these shores as a nation, we had a name that we was called upon, and it was one name, and that name was Yisrael. We never identified ourselves by continent, and we definitely never identified ourselves as another people. Peace and blessings.
All right, family. Once again, that number to call in is 319-527-6239. This is the roundtable episode of Debate Talk Free Radio. Actually, I got word from Ron Divine Prospect. He's going to be calling in very soon, so hopefully we get to hear from him. But right now, let's go to Akwete. Akwete, I'm going to give you 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sal. I don't think I'll need the 6 minutes, but it's interesting, or it's been interesting before I came out to speak on this issue of Hebrews and Hebrew Israelites, because I noticed that my brothers here in the West, when it comes to showing who we are, they were focused solely on the scriptures. But what most don't know is that we can prove who we are outside of the scriptures. You don't have to solely rely on the scriptures to prove who you are. History tells us who we are. Our oral tradition tells us who we are. Our customs that we have kept tells us who we are. And these are more solid. These back up what the scriptures say. So when we focus solely on scriptures, like I have observed in the West, it doesn't do us any good, because I have brothers home that are Muslims and they're Hebrews, but they're converted to Islam. I cannot tell them their identity by quoting scripture because they don't look at my scripture as authoritative. But when I talk to them and I tell them this is the history, they're more open to listen to me. So we should do more historical work. We should bring more scholarship, not solely on the text, but we should be able to call on history to tell us this. Because when we migrated to West Africa, we did not have the Torah with us. No, but we knew that we were Hebrews. We knew that we came from the land of Israel. So my focus, if you've noticed, is to stay on the historical facts, because we cannot just quote scriptures. Deuteronomy 28 and Genesis 49 out of context. That's why I call them bogus scriptures, to prove our identity. Take a trip to West Africa. We have planes. Anyone that is serious about this, take a trip backwards to where you can trace your roots to. Visit the place. Talk to the people if you cannot make the trip. Let them tell you what their elders have passed on to them. You cannot read the scriptures and get the whole picture. Not at all. Like my brother JC was saying. All these things that were the Westerners painted as idolatry, they're all in the Torah. Like he said, casting lots is still done today. All these things in the Torah are still practiced today, and you have the evidence, eyewitness report to back up your scriptures. So that's my thing. Let's do scholarship, history, so that we can back up our claim and our assertion intellectually. Let's be intellectually honest and not just spew out scriptures. Thank you, Sal.
All right, so there you have it, family. We got more time. Then we're going to go around the table. We're going to go around the table and get some more, answers and more comments from the special guests. Again, the other special guests are trying to call in. Some people having difficulties. Some just trying to reach out to, let them know that, they can call in. But again, that number, family, is 319-527-6239. If you have a question for the guests on the panel, you could call in. It's press number 1, or I'll add you in the conversation. Since part 1, I've been getting a lot of questions to ask you guys, actually, for part 2. And one of the main questions that I received since part 1 is there's a lot of American Hebrew Israelites out here that tend to believe that people in Africa have a problem or issue when it comes to Hebrew Israelites in America. Is that true, or is that something made up? I want you guys to, speak about that. There's people out there that really believe there's some kind of discrimination between Africans looking down upon American Hebrew Israelites. Is that a real issue? Is that not a real issue? We're going to talk about those things. Let's go to JC. 6 minutes, go ahead. Yes, JC, are you there? Can you hear me? JC, are you there? Okay.
I'm
I
here.
can hear you now. Let me reset the time.
My phone was on mute. My phone was on mute. Now, when it comes to that question, I think a lot of African American Hebrews, especially the ones who stay in areas or states that has a high volume of continental Africans who came over here for work or for school or for whatever. They have a high concentration of that in those areas, especially like in New York. A lot of the anti-African rhetoric came out of New York. What they don't understand is they don't understand tribalism. They don't understand tribalism. Every continental African I've met, I've not received negative feedback or vibe from, but that's just my personal experience. Most of the time, they can look at me and tell what tribe in Africa I came from without me even telling them that I'm Igbo. Like, I'm not saying I'm Igbo because I dreamed it up. I have actual family records and DNA records saying that I'm Igbo, and they know right away. It's just that in America, we don't understand tribalism and how bad it is in Africa when you have like the Akan people, but they don't like each other. They're the same people. The Fan and the Fanti are the exact same people, but they don't like each other. It's just that when they see us over here, depending on where they're from, what tribe they're from, they're going to either look at you and not identify with you, and not be that cordial with you. And sometimes you have some Africans who don't even want to be African; they want to be European. I know some Igbos who don't even want to be Igbo; they want to be British. So it's deeper than what we understand. Like, we feel like a lot of African Americans feel like we got took from over there and got brought over here and got put into slavery, and everybody on the continent got off scot-free. That's false. Even though we got took and put in slavery over here, a lot of them got put into slavery over there. They had crops that they had to, the slave masters had them cultivate and harvest. They had buildings and structures they forced them to build. You go to West Africa, you see all the Portuguese structures and stuff like that. Who you think built those? They went through the exact same thing we went through over here. The exact same thing. It's not that anybody hates you. You just need to know who you are. So once you know who you are and figure out who everybody else is, you can deal with people accordingly. You know, that's what it really is. And African Americans can't talk about people not liking them. They don't like each other. Crips and Bloods, GDs, Vice Lords, they got their own sects and tribes too. It's the same thing. We still a tribal people. Even in ancient Israel, it was the exact same thing. Why was the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom fighting? Why did the scholars and the scribes who wrote the Torah, who were heavily Southern Kingdom, why do they always talk bad about the Northern Kingdom? Same thing. It's the same thing. I think African Americans have a abandonment issue, like a foster child or adopted kid. They wonder why their parent is not looking for them. They feel like they got left behind. We live in 2017. Like a quote they said, if you want to learn about your culture, go to Africa. Do a DNA test. Research. Go get a book. Go to the library. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. That's all I have to say.
All right, family. Once again, it's the Roundtable, episode 37. All right. African Hebrew Israelite Controversy, the African Hebrew Israelite Controversy Part 2. You know that number by now. But let me see if Ron Devon Prospect phone is working at this time. Let's go. Ron Devon Prospect, can you hear me? Hold on. Wait, hold on. Let me see. Maybe it's the wrong line. Let's go to this line right here. 678. Can you hear me?
Yes. Shalom, shalom.
Oh, there we go. What's going on? What's going on, my brother? How you feeling, man? What's happening?
Good. I'm doing good, Sal. How are you?
Man, doing pretty good, you know. Just trying to tackle this topic, African Hebrew Israelite controversy. I don't know if you heard the question. Did you get to hear the question?
No, I didn't get a chance to hear the question. I'm just now getting on the line. I apologize.
Nah, that's cool. It's cool. Now, the question was, you know, a lot of people here in America tend to believe that people in Africa have like some kind of discrimination, you know, against Hebrew Israelites, you know, in America, you know, compared to the Hebrew Israelites in Africa. Is that real? Is that a real thing that's happening in Africa and vice versa? Let's talk about that. Okay, and you have 6 minutes to, you know, say your piece. We're going to go around, you know, 6 minutes each. Go ahead.
Well, what I'll say is that from the experience that I've had from interfacing and dialoguing with people on both sides of the pond, there's going to be individuals who are naive and ignorant and don't truly understand the worldview or perspective of us over here in America, whether it be our fellow brothers and sisters who are Israelites in Africa or whether they be indigenous people from Africa who are not Israelites. So, you know, I haven't really encountered too many bad experiences with brothers and sisters who are in the continent of Africa that actually have that heavy biasness towards us. I think the ones that do have issues with us are the ones who feel that we are usurping their indigenous African spiritual systems and cultures in lieu of our Hebrew Israelite customs, cultures, and identity. And I think that's where a lot of the tension comes from when they perceive that we are trying to usurp or override their indigenous culture. Now, there are other individuals that are pockets of Israelites that live amongst those other people who identify themselves as being the Yahudim or Israelites, etc. Even they themselves sometimes faces ostracization from their own community, or sometimes they're looked at in a different light and so forth. So it would only make sense that if they feel estranged towards their fellow brothers and sisters who identify as being a Yahudim or Israelite, that extension will go out to us as well. So I would say that, everything has to be looked at as a case-by-case scenario. I try not to do any kind of hasty generalizations or try not to make any blanket statements, because life is not black and white. There are a lot of different variables and circumstances and situations that determine specific ways to address it and deal with it. But ultimately, from my angle and from my perspective, that's pretty much what I've experienced, encountered, and what I perceive.
All right, we appreciate that. Let's go to Duane Harris. Duane Harris, go ahead.
Amen, amen. All right, well, I got to say, everything that's been said so far is very on point for me. When I look at the situation in Africa and their relation to us in America, there is going to be some cultural differences there. And I think we have to come on both sides, come from a humble place of knowing that we don't know each other's culture. We know the propaganda and what we're shown on TV and movies and things like that. So like Equete said, it's very important for us to research our history, research our roots. There are many people that are in West Africa that have zero knowledge of the slave trade. They have zero knowledge of what we as Hebrews in America have gone through. At the same token, we don't know what they went through. And so that's the situation that we're dealing with. So that being said, I think it's something where if we're open to dialogue with one another and understand that there are going to be some differences and understand that there is a remnant, we'll have to accept that fact that not everybody is going to want to actually be counted as a Hebrew Israelite. Some people are going to want to stay the same. Some people are going to want to go ahead and, I've encountered some even Hebrews in America that say, I don't want to be Hebrew. So that's something that we have to understand that's the case for some people. Not everybody wants to be a Hebrew or is willing to accept that fact. But as far as, drama, beef, issues between the two, I think you're always going to get that. We have issues here in America. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right, let's go to Morey Doc. Go ahead.
Okay, peace and blessings once again. I'll say this. I think I'm about 80% on board with what the brothers have been saying concerning the way our brothers and the way people from another continent view us. I do think in us representing ourselves a certain way, Israelites, and there's certain things that people see that they don't like. And when you're telling people you're living wrong, and so you need to change the way you live, and when we see cultural differences that we don't like, that brings a certain amount of resentment out by default. Not necessarily because I'm an Israelite, but because I'm an Israelite and I'm telling you to change your way of life. Or because I'm an Israelite and I'm saying the God you serve is a false God. Well, that brings a defensive up on people. And so sometimes you will get that thing of people amongst ourselves, amongst the same nation, Israelites looking at Israelites of, oh, well, you think you're better than me. Or, well, you're trying to tell me like you're all high and mighty, and you're not high and mighty. You're just like me. So when that comes out, then yes, there will be a certain level of resentment. However, with all things, with education comes tolerance. But if you don't have the education toward it, then you're going to get ignorance. And so when these things happen, sometimes it's like, and listen, I hear it. I understand the way I represent myself. People stop and they go, oh, you're an Israelite. Oh, you're a Hebrew Israelite. Oh, you're one of those Torah-only guys. And I've seen it on both sides of people stop and they go, oh, let me guess, you're Messianic, right? And it's the same thing that they put into our heads over dark-skinned and light-skinned people. Oh, you're too dark. Oh, you're too black. Oh, you're too pro-black. Or you think you're privileged because you're light, so they favor you over dark-skinned people. Oh, you think you're educated because you articulate well, but you're not better than me. Some of these things feed into it. And also, never negating scripture, because the sign of an Israelite is the person who comes with the word of God in their mouth, is that God put a curse upon us that people would hate us. God put a curse upon us so great that we would hate one another, and that we couldn't see the greater picture that we're all one family and all one people, and that we would want to hate and destroy one another. So in closing, I'll say this. Do I believe that there's some certain level of resentment? Yes, I think there's some there. I would be ignorant to say that it's not there. Do I think it's on a grand scale? No, I do not. I just think as us coming back as a people, as we begin to learn one another, learn each other's differences, learn each other's customs, and the way we go about doing things, because we all haven't come up in the same household or in the same state, continent, and what have you, that when you have that, people will stop and say, okay, I can accept this person for their individuality, although we're the same people, they're doing things different. Peace and blessings.
All right, let's go to Akwete. Akwete, yeah, you can respond.
Thank you, Sal. Yes, having lived in both places, what everybody has said is quite true. Even in Africa, there's a lot of tribalism. We don't like each other, even though we know we are brothers. I could give you a classic example. When someone is going to get married, we'll tell you don't marry from this tribe. Do we hate them? No, we don't. It's just that we don't want you to marry from that tribe because of experiences or the history that has come out of that tribe if you go into marry with them. So there's a lot of tribalism on the continent of Africa till today. When you leave that culture, like I had to, and come over to the West, there's a culture shock. We do things very differently. I used to get very offended, but I had to remove my African lens and put on the American lens so that I could understand why certain things happen this way here and we frown upon it across the ocean. So you have someone who's never been to the Americas and has a stereotype or has this, not hatred, but has this, what word should I use? I'll say frustration. I explain that word very soon. They have this frustration about our brothers in the West. Why? Because it's built into us that America is a land flowing with milk and honey. America is the only country that you can come to with nothing and you can leave a billionaire or a millionaire. The sky is the limit. That is what we are taught. That is what we watch on TV. That is what is fed to us. So when someone in Africa looks across the ocean and sees our brothers not making use of the resources that they have at hand, they get frustrated. They might say, our brothers over the shores are lazy. No, that is the mindset. But until you come across and see the realities that the brothers have to deal with, you will change your perspective. So it's a culture thing. It's how they're looking through their lens. But if you've experienced both worlds, you would understand that it's not as easy. There's so many things that restrict our brothers across the ocean. So do some Africans hate some Americans? I wouldn't say no. Do some Americans, forgive the word, Americans, hate some brothers back in Africa? I wouldn't say no. Do Africans hate each other? Of course. Do Hebrews in America hate each other? Of course. So that's the reality of it. But I've really met some Hebrews here who are amazing, just amazing. That is, until I put on the Western lenses to look at things, how the divine prospect will see things. Then I can relate and understand. and then I will not look down on the fellow. That's my 2 cents on it.
All right, family. Once again, you're now listening to Debate Talk Radio. This is the Roundtable, episode 37, family. African Hebrew Israelite Controversy, Part 2. If you missed Part 1, go to the archives and go check it out. Again, feel free to call in. If you have any questions or comments, you know that number is 319-527-6239. Put it on speed dial. Make sure you call into the show. We like to hear from the people out there. Only rule that we have is there's no foul language. You got to keep it clean when you call in, though, and you got to keep it professional. Another question that I received an overwhelming amount of emails to ask the people on this panel is, there's some people out there that says, yeah, we've been scattered all over the earth and things of that nature, but there is no such thing as African Hebrew Israelites. Yes, there are Hebrew Israelites in Africa, but there's no such thing as African Hebrew Israelites. I had a whole bunch of social media inboxes and emails stating that, and I want to hear from the panel what they think or what kind of research they gathered when they hear things of that nature. Let's go to Ron Devon Prospect. Go ahead.
Peace, shalom, family. Yeah, so I think the problem is that people automatically assume that the title Africa, like Africa itself as a continent, is a misnomer. Some people say when you aptly apply it to people who identify as being Hebrew Israelites, and it's not. It's not a misnomer at all. I mean, Africa, depending upon how you view the etymon of the word, even its common usage today. So I'm going to stick with its common usage today, or the connotative value for the word, for some people who probably are not familiar with the history. And I'm going to say that because that's the best way I can colloquially convey what I'm about to say. So Africa as a continent is just that. It's a continent, right? It is made up of a particular tectonic plate, and that tectonic plate extends all the way to northeast Africa through the Sinai Peninsula onto the place what we call Israel today, or Palestine today. It is actually separated by the Dead Sea Transform towards the east of the Jordan River, and it goes all the way straight up towards Lebanon. So all of that technically is part of the tectonic plate of Africa. Now, does that mean that this became a boundary in times of old where the people knew, understand, and identified that this landmass, tectonically speaking, dealing with the lithosphere of the earth, geographically consisted of people considered Africans? No, that is something that we today look back in time and we attribute to these people being Africans. You know what I'm saying? They didn't call themselves this during the time that the Hebrew Israelites were, quote unquote, in existence in antiquity. They didn't call themselves Africans. You know what I'm saying? The Egyptians didn't call themselves Africans. The Sudanese or the Nubians, those from Kasseri, didn't call themselves Africans. This is a modern term that we're using today to identify things in the past. So technically it's an anachronism that we're using, right? So anybody that inhabited, from my perspective, anybody that inhabited that continent and that tectonic plate of Africa, I consider them, whether it is today's time or whether it's during the past, to be African. And I also look at their indigenous spiritual system. Now, my angle is kind of unique within my community because I specialize in the pre-exilic ancient Israelite culture, which I believe is something that is very unique, and it is misconstrued by people who view the Hebrew Israelite culture through this lens of Second Temple Judaism. Because from my angle, Second Temple Judaism, it has this monotheistic view, right? Second Temple Judaism, there's a lot of customs that were lost when the Israelites went into captivity that they were maintaining while they were in the land of their sovereignty, right? So the reason why I say this is because if you look at the indigenous spiritual system that the pre-exilic ancient Israelites had, it is very similar to the practices that we see in Africa, or the continent, the interior continent of Africa. The difference being that we had a different power that was over us, and we had what we call today the mitzvah, or the statutes, laws, and commandments. But tied to that is a custom and a culture that is similar to what we view in Africa. It's not the same as the spiritual system in Africa. Just like you have distinctions, like the San people, They have a different way of worshiping than if you look at the Mandinka people or the Mande tribe. You know what I'm saying? But if you look at the core of these spiritual systems, you'll see a great similarity, right? So I say that to say anybody with those cultures that at the core have similar traits, people that inhabited on that continent, these are Africans. Now, there is a greater divide from Ham and Shem, and you can tell that by looking at the customs and cultures of the people. I'm sorry.
I mean, there's 2 minutes left. Go ahead. You got 2 minutes left.
Okay, so you can see a greater divide when you inspect the people themselves in regards to their oral traditions, which you can get from the griots of those communities, based on their customs, based on their traditions, based on the way that they structure their tribes, their hierarchy within the tribes, how they build their homes, how they interface with the family unit, how they worship, right? What they acknowledge as being the greater power, and these are all fingerprints or ethnic markers that we can use to identify and separate who's from Shem and who's from Ham. Some people go a little further and they look into the DNA aspect of it to look at the anthropological migration from that perspective, but you can also look at it from the actual people themselves. So the Israelites that are on the continent of Africa, the ones that identify themselves as being such within subclans of a greater tribe, they give you their oral traditions. They tell you how they got there. They tell you how they worship. They tell you their customs. They tell you whether they keep a day of rest. They tell you if they're circumcised. They tell you all these things. So even though they are on the continent of Africa, we still see a greater divide between those who are purely Hamitic, those who are purely Shemitic, but there's a very difficult to distinguish certain things indigenously, modern day conversion, where sometimes it may be kind of difficult just looking at them from a blanket view from those who actually encapsulate the indigenous culture of the pre-exilic ancient Israelites. So hopefully that makes sense. And like I said, there's still Hamites and Shemites on that continent, and because they dwell on the continent, they're all considered Africans by proxy of that.
All right, let's go to JC. JC, 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Peace. Could you tell me the question again? Can you hear me? Talk? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Can you tell me the question again?
Yeah, there's some people out there that believe that there's like some kind of discrimination when it comes to the African Hebrew Israelites, and and then, hold on one second. Hold on. Somebody's actually calling me for on the background. Hold on one second. I'm gonna get back to you in a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, before I'm just gonna somebody's calling me. Let me just let somebody else respond. I'm gonna come right back to you. Hold on. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I got to take this call. Moray Yiftak, you could just can you respond real quick? I'm gonna come back in a few minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Peace and blessings once again. I think it's important for us to understand as a people. It's well known you can't understand where you're going unless you understand where you came from. We have to get to a point where we understand that before we were calling ourselves black people, before we were calling ourselves whatever these names are that we're calling ourselves by these new names, there were quote-unquote black people, people of color, dwelling on a continent, same land, sharing a land, and there was no problem with it. They understood where they belonged. They understood when they were in foreign territory. They understood when they were amongst their own. Oftentimes, we're going to use the scriptures as a point of reference because as Israelites, we see that as the point of antiquity, talking about from the beginning when the heavens and the earth were made. So you seen when the man Moses, who was an Hebrew, went amongst the Midianites, they thought he was an Egyptian. They didn't stop and say, oh, he's a Hebrew. They say he's an Egyptian. But when Hebrews went amongst Egyptians, Egyptians understood that they were Hebrews. And so as we get to that and we understand where we're sharing, if we stop and we look at prophecy, and I understand there may be some people amongst this round table that don't follow scriptures the way I follow scriptures. But if we stop and we look at prophecy and we look at the book of Ezekiel, and we look at when God talked about the end of days, he's talking about nations coming up against us. He's identifying people. And these scriptures were wrote centuries ago. So if he was identifying people then that we would have to identify in these days and times, then we have to get back to who we were and how these people were identified. And so I'm going to say this. The term Hebrew Israelite is a redundant term. You don't need to say Hebrew Israelite. Either you're a Hebrew or you're an Israelite. If you use the term standalone, they're fine. But when you call yourself an African, you're not identifying who you are. You got to drill down to that tribe. When you call yourself a Hebrew, you got to drill down to that tribe. When you get to Europeans and, Nordic people, everybody identifies a certain way. So when we look at Africa, the continent is not a divide. We all share the continent. And so when we stop and we look at that, I want us to understand this is not about, oh, why do you call yourself this? This is not about that. This is about properly identifying yourself. And I would say the same thing to anybody who identifies themselves as a black person, as a Negro, as a colored person, or even as a Jew. I stop and I look at these things and I say, how come we don't want to call ourselves who we are? And what are these names that we're taking on? So, yeah, as we go back to the continent, we're filtered in. I can see that. We're filtered in amongst the foreign people on the continent of Africa. That's without a doubt. We're filtered in Europe, in Britain, in South America, in Central America, in Canada. We're filtered in. I'm not saying we're not filtered in, but those people who understand who they are and those people who can identify who they are, then by all means, identify yourself. But when we break down prophecy and we get back to those tribes that the Most High God sent out, that we see that there's no other nation in this world that this has happened on a grand scale like this except for us, it's time for us to get back to naming ourselves after who God named us. And until we get to that point, we live in the curse. And that's going to be my last statement on this before I close out right here. Until we call ourselves exactly who we are, we live in the curse. Peace and blessings.
All right, Moray, Doc, we appreciate you, my brother. We appreciate you. I had to take a important phone call. Sorry about that, everybody. But head back to JC, open up the phone line once again. Yeah, the question was, I got a lot of emails, a lot of responses from social media saying basically there's no such thing as African Hebrew Israelites. There's no such thing, though, as the Hebrew Israelites in Africa. From your research, what's your perspective on that?
All right, it's a couple of ways I can explain it. When I say African Hebrew Israelite, I'm identifying the fact that I'm Pan-African in my worldview when I say African. But from a cultural standpoint, I'm an Israelite. That's what that means. I know Hebrews like to get real technical and they say, the name Africa came from a white man, Leo Scipios Africanus, and they riddle off this conjecture. The name Africa didn't come from Leo Scipios Africanus. The name Africa came from a tribe, a nomadic tribe in Africa called the Afar, right? And the only portion of the continent of Africa that was called Africa was the northern extreme portion of Africa that we know today. That's the only part of the continent that was called Africa in ancient times, the only part. Now, when it comes to the word Africa, when you do comparative linguistics, we can trace the word Afrik from the Greek. We can trace that back to the Hebrew Afar, which means dust. We can trace Afri in Hebrew. We can trace that back to the Yoruba. They say Afrik means dirt, dust, mud. Means dust, dirt, mud. Just like in Hebrew, eretz means earth. These are cognate words. I mean, those are cognate words. So why was that portion of the continent called dust? Africa literally means the land of dust. Why do they call it the land of dust? Because the portion of the continent that was called Africa is what we call the Sahara Desert. As simple as that. Even the root consonants of the word Africa or Afri, you can find it in Hebrew names as Ephraim. You can find it in the Hebrew name Eber, Iver. You can find that same consonant in there. It's just the B and the R and the F and the R are interchangeable due to an ethnic sound shift. And why would the Hebrews be called the people of the dust? Because they were a desert nomadic, semi-nomadic people. So, and I think a lot of Hebrews say, "Oh, I'm not no Hamite. I'm not African." They think African and Hamite is synonymous. That's false. We all know that the name Ham in English is Kam in Hebrew, and we know the Hebrew Kam in ancient Egyptian is Kemet. It's talking about Egypt. When the Bible says Hamite, it's not talking about the whole continent. It's specifically talking about from Ham. That's it. And they have a tiny corner of the whole continent, not the whole thing. It's as simple as that. I think the accepted Hebrew doctrine in America created this stigma when it comes to identifying yourself as African. I mean, I don't really have to repeat the various obscenities they use for Africans. Stinky Hamites and doo-doo eating Hamites, some childish elementary terms they use. They look at Africa through the eyes of the Europeans of being undeveloped and barbaric, and that's false. And a lot of them don't know that they're following a Zionist Jewish Hamitic anti-Hamitic doctrine when they say that. It's crazy. It's really crazy. I mean, it's so much I can say on this one topic alone. Even the name Israel itself is an African name. The name Hebrew itself is an African name. You know where you can get around. There's no way you can get around. If you call yourself a Hebrew or Israelite, there's no way you can get around identifying yourself with the continent. No way. You can be as meticulous and as detailed as you want, but you can never get away from that. And the more you try to get away from that, and the more you ignore that, is the longer you're going to be lost. Because you can quote scriptures all you want, because you don't have to be a Hebrew Israelite to follow the Most High. You don't have. They don't. That's not a necessity. But in order for you to know who you are, you gotta go back to Africa. You gotta look back to Africa. Point blank. Period. Even some Europeans even look back to Africa when they deal with the out of Africa theory and Lucy and all this stuff in Africa. Even they do that. It's just that we were taught to look at Africa and say, they poor. They got flies on you. Like stupid stuff like that. Like Akweti said, the stuff you see on TV. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta get out of that. And that's why my primary focus is comparative linguistics, and putting back the ancient Hebraic cultures in its indigenous form. That's very important. That's very important. And I know Divine Prospect can build more about the pre-exilic customs of the Israelites versus Second Temple Judaism that we see today. That's prevalent, even in the Hebrew Israelite community. They claim we claim to be so Hebrew Israelite and anti this and anti that. When in actuality we're following a doctrine that's the dredge and the residue from Second Temple Judaism. And if our ancestors were here now and they saw us,
yes, I apologize, brother. 6 minutes was up. We're going to come back to you, of course. You know that already. But let's go to Duane Harris. Duane Harris, you got 6 minutes today.
What's going on, y'all? All right, I will not need 6 minutes on this topic. All right, I'm trying to be standing to the question. To me, the question in and of itself is a non-starter, but I want to be sympathetic to those that ask that question. It's that question, to me, is such a non-starter. It has zero basis on what we are dealing with right now at all. The bottom line is we are Hebrew by blood. We are Israelites. Outside of that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're in Africa. It doesn't matter if you're in India. It doesn't matter if you're in America or the islands or wherever you may be. You have Hebraic blood running through your veins. You are a Hebrew Israelite. And I understand that people have different thoughts on that, but the reason why we say Hebrew Israelite is because there are counterfeits on this earth right now that are using the term Jews and they're using the term Israelite, and they're living in the land of Israel. And that's the reason why, to differentiate ourselves from simply saying I'm an Israelite, we say I am a Hebrew Israelite, because it's a blood relationship, not just wanting to pull something out of thin air. And we can base that off of the oral traditions that are found within our own country, within West Africa, within the various Bantu-speaking peoples, the Hebrew people that are currently residing in Africa. It's such a silly question to even throw that out there about a continent or the name of a continent. It doesn't matter, because we are Hebrew Israelites. There are Hebrew Israelites that don't even know it that are sitting there in India, the city people. They're Hebrew Israelites from Tanzania and Mozambique and Kenya, and they got dropped off in India. You got our people that were sent to Asia and were castrated, serving Chinese emperors and Japanese emperors, given away as gifts. We were all over this world. So a continent is silly. It doesn't even mean anything, because the bottom line is we are a Hebraic people under covenant, and that's the reason why the world hates us. It don't matter what continent you want to claim, Pan-Africanism, you could be whatever you want to be. The world hates us because the covenant of Yah is upon us. They want to be us. That's why they say, oh, it doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter. It's not an issue of color, because there's some black people that are not Hebrew Israelites. It's about the covenant. It doesn't matter about the continent. It doesn't matter about none of that stuff. A lot of this stuff is thrown out there as a red herring to get us fighting over stupid stuff. It may matter to some people. It may make them feel better to break out a list of different facts and figures and documentation on this and that and everything else. But at the bottom line is, what are we doing as a Hebrew people? What does African Hebrew Israelite got to do with the Hebrew woman in America that don't know she's a Hebrew yet, that's still caught up in the paganism in some of the Christian churches, that doesn't even know who she is and why her and her people are getting broke down like they are? We're so confused. We're hurting all over this world. There's people hurting and dying and struggling, and they need us to stop this nonsense and foolery and fighting over stupid stuff that doesn't even matter in regards to who we are as a people. We have to unite. There's a remnant. You know what? Not everybody's going to make it. There's a remnant, and that remnant has to come together and stop striving off of silly stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, because I've studied the Middle East, the so-called Middle East right now. I've studied different terrorist groups and how they operate, the world systems and everything, and how they fight and create strife. and infighting. I've seen how, because our system works, how they will feed into the system to cause confusion, to cause strife and division, so that we stay confused, so that we don't know who we are, so that we stay bickering and fighting over a continent of Africa. Bottom line is this: what are we going to do for our people that are awakening to this truth? Are we going to really sit here for 3 hours fighting over the continent of Africa, the name? No. What are we going to do for our people? We got to, like, some of these stuff is like, what are we doing for, what does African Hebrew Israelite naming convention got to do with the struggle we living in right now? That's my question for everybody. I'll stop right there.
All right, Quete, since you're on the line, you can go ahead and follow up.
Okay, thank you. Jacob and his family went down to Egypt as a family. They became a clan. They then became a tribe. And then they became a nation in Egypt. We call the continent Africa today. So speaking by today's terms, Egypt is an Africa. Israel is an Africa. Everybody should answer this question. We became a nation not on the land of Israel. We became a nation in Egypt. When our ancestors stood at Sinai and got the Torah, and they were on their way to the land of Canaan, if you had met them and rapped, and you had asked them where they're from, they would not say Israel. They would not say that. What would they say? You answer that yourself. They are Semitic Africans on the continent of Africa. We don't call ourselves Hebrew because Hebrew is an English name, like my brother JC is saying. We call ourselves Eves. That is what is in the Torah. So I'm a Hebrew Israelite. I'm a this. Let's come back to the original name. We are Eves. The Hebrews, speaking in English, in Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, Benin, the whole name. We come under that title, Eves. That's what you call Ivri or Ibra. Take the Paleo-Hebrew, the symbols, and spell it, you get Eves. Are we Africans? Of course. We're too proud. We are Semitic Africans, just like the ancient people in the Torah. Thank you, Sal.
All right, family. We have like 26 minutes on the air. We have 26 minutes on the air, and we have a lot of people on the phone lines and on social media listening to the show. Again, if you want to chime in, if you already called in, simply press number 1, and we'll let you ask a question to the panel. Other than that, if you're on social media, if you're on Blog Talk Radio, and you got a question, you're going to have to dial that number via phone or via Skype. Once again, 319-527-6239 is the number to call in. If you have a question for the panel, we'll want to hear from the people out there. And again, we have a lot of people on social media. And thanks to the people out there that's sharing this show on their personal page, letting people know that Debate Talk for You is live and on the air, and they're enjoying the dialogue. So we appreciate the family on social media and, of course, on the phone lines that's tuning into the show. We're going to go back around. Let me see. Let's go to JC. Hold on. Let me see if he can hear me. Jason, can you hear me? Radio Jack?
I can hear you. I'm here.
Yeah. Now, we spoke, behind the scenes, and there's a lot of things that you said you wanted to pretty much bring out. Is there a question or something that you want to hear a response from the people on the panel in relation to this topic? Just put it out there now. Go ahead.
I feel like everybody on the panel pretty much would understand the questions that I have for certain Hebrews. And I want to agree with the brother Wayne when you said it don't really matter. It don't really matter. It matters to camp Israelites who seem to think that they were chosen to delegate who came from what tribe and who's not from this tribe. That's what it really matters to. And part of part of coming into the truth of being an Israelite, if you're coming into it off the street or from online or whatever, the first thing they tell you is you're not African. You're not African American. You're not black. That's the first thing they tell you. Right? That's the first thing they tell you. We got to stop doing that. Quete also brought up the use of Deuteronomy chapter 28. I'm very anti using Deuteronomy 28 for historical purposes. Now, you can use it for biblical hermeneutic purposes. That's cool. Where you identify with the curses and the trials and tribulations that the ancient Israelites went through. That's cool. A lot of people do that. Even people who aren't even Israelites use that. But from a historical standpoint, you can't use it. Because the reason why you can't use it, because what would end up happening is what's happening today. People are ostracizing other people who they say, "Oh, you don't fit the curses." That's not how you do things. And they're mainly doing it to Africans who have their ancient culture, who have the ancient Hebrew culture already. They've been had it. So, I mean, if anything, they would probably want to go back and instead of trying to go over there and teach like Israelite United in Christ did, they should go over there and learn. Try to speak to an elder. See what they know. Have them take you to the slave castles and different landmarks. They even have a museum for us in Mali with one of the world's biggest statues in front of it. So it's a lot of things that I can go into on this topic. And then recognizing Africa and studying Africa, even not even from a Hebrew Israelite perspective, and trying to prove identity, period, will give you a better understanding of the Torah. Why did they do certain things? What did certain things mean? Like certain things in the Torah aren't that cut and dry because the person who was writing was actually living it. So he didn't have to explain it into detail for the readers because they would read it and they would already know. Like, okay, yeah, he's talking about this. So he didn't have to write it in such detail. But when you put those stories back into his African origin or indigenous origin, you get to see the meanings and understanding of it. But yeah, I can talk all day. There's only one other thing I really wanted to talk about, and that was how Hebrew Israelites view women. They have a lot of them. A lot of us have a Western way of viewing women in their role within a nation. A lot of Hebrews say, "Well, we didn't have queens." We didn't. Yeah, we did have queens. We did have queens. She was called Geburah. That was her title, the Queen Mother. The whole kingdom of Judah had queens, and even some of the northern women became queens. And it falls in line. The Geburah falls in line with West Africa, where you go to Kingdom Bornu, and they called their queen mother Megira. Exact same word, the exact same office. It wasn't the wife of the king; it was the mother of the king, who had that role. And I'm in the process of doing a research article on the actual role of the Geburah, because a lot of biblical scholars of her, due to their Western mindset, she was more than just a queen. She had a lot of power, and she had a spiritual office too. And she was a priestess. Yeah, we had priestess. Yes, we had priestess. So that's a whole other topic for a whole other show. But I wanted to address that.
All right, family. Yep. Okay, all right, family. We have like 20 minutes on the air. We have 20 minutes on the air. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you know that number. Let's press number 1 and we'll add you in the conversation. Let's go to Ron Divine Prospect. Ron, can you hear me? Yes, Ron.
Shalom,
Can you
shalom.
hear me? Shalom.
Yes, shalom.
Yeah. Actually, I've been getting a lot of, also, like I said, I got a lot since part one. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of emails, a lot of responses from people. And actually, let's talk about the One West perspective. I know you got a lot of feet on the ground, doing the work and everything. Matter of fact, I got a lot of pushback from this particular topic, African Hebrew Israelite controversy, from a One West perspective. What's your understanding, of the One West perspective on this particular topic? Go ahead.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna speak from my experience with some associates that I had that are One West Hebrew Israelites. There's a lot of people in the camps that I have good relationships with, but they understand that when it comes to certain points of doctrine, we differ, and we are able to mutually disagree amicably, right? But from my gathering of understanding the history of One West, a gathering of having experience with these brothers and associates that I have in that community, I think we pretty much covered, what the biasness is. I mean, JC touched on it, and a couple of other things that we said in passing also touched on it. Their outlook is, number one, Ham is distinct from Shem. So in their mind, there's a complete and utter separation and distinction between Ham and Shem, right? Number two, their thing is that the Most High, when he intervened in regards to separating the children of Israel as a nation in Kemet, out of Kemet, he did so through Pesach, or Passover, where he killed the firstborn of Egypt. So in their mind, that's indicative that, if the Most High, if he is willing enough to kill the firstborn of the Egyptians and to bring his people out of Egypt, then that means that he is opposed to those peoples and he's opposed to that culture. And we know Mizraim comes from Ham, right? So that's important to identify in regards to their worldview. Also, in regards to the transatlantic slave trade, or the ma'afa that we are here in America, the diaspora, they believe that it was purely the fault of the Africans, quote unquote, who they make synonymous with the Hamites, that were responsible for conspiring against the Hebrew Israelites, as they will call it, in West Africa and bringing us into the transatlantic slave trade. So they also see that as a means of Ham, Backstam, and Shem, the lineage of Shem, in regards to selling them into slavery. So their thing is, well, why would I show love to these people who are responsible for selling my ancestors into slavery, right? So that would give them another edge of why they don't identify with Ham. Another thing that they look at is some of the customs and cultures of Hamites. Now, it's interesting because a lot of them have a very short-sighted view in regards to African culture. It's evident to me that a lot of my associates who are from One West don't study the entire continent of Africa and all the peoples on it, because they typically look for what they find to be the most grotesque practices, and instead of them taking time to view it from the indigenous African perspective or the Hamitic perspective, they typically use it as a point of saying, hey, we ain't no damn Africans because look what the Africans do, look what their cultures do. Are you going to stick your face in the behind of a cow, or are you going to drink blood, and are you going to scar your face? And they deem these practices to be very grotesque and vile, and they're saying, well, we here in America, we don't do those practices. So why would you want to identify with those people when you know you're not going to go and engender yourself in those practices? You know what I'm saying? So, these are some of the main points of contention in regards to how they see a distinction between them and Hamites. But in their mind, they identify Africans. Whenever they hear that word, they automatically associate it with the people of Ham. Now, this is not all camps. Some camps do identify that there are Israelites that are in Africa. But their thing is that if I was to take them into Africa and I was able to show them these Israelite tribes that are in Africa, who we say is the Ewe people, and I was to say to them, hey, can you phenotypically show me the difference between these two? That's another thing that they do. Okay,
2 minutes left.
That's another thing that they do. Gotcha. So that's another thing they do. They'll hold up a picture of who they deem to be a Hamite or an African and say, hey, we don't even look like them. Look how we look here in America and look how they look. Now, that, again, shows a degree of being naive and not understanding that there was an admixture of various tribes that came into Ma'afa amongst each other and an admixture of the oppressor who subjugated us to slavery. So obviously you're going to have a differentiation in phenotypes looking over a period of time as opposed to certain African tribes who are still on a continent who are still isolates amongst their own other brothers and sisters. We hear an amalgamation of various things, so obviously our phenotypes are going to change. But if you bring them there and you will point to two people and say, well, tell me the difference between which one is a Shemite, which one is a Hamite, they wouldn't be able to tell. And if they were to look at the indigenous practices of the Israelites that are there in Africa, side by side with, let's say, a fellow Hamitic brother or sister, outside of the garments, those who really claim to be from the northern tribe of descendants in West Africa, the Evre there, it would be very hard for them to distinguish the difference, right? And that is the big stickler that they would have to deal with in regards to being the fingerprint who's who. So I think that if they're educated more, especially with these type of discussions, then they will have a broader worldview in regards to how to properly reorient yourselves and identifying who's really from your lineage and who those who you deem to be your oppressors or your enemies in the terms of Hamites are actually people that took us in West Africa and made sure we was good before the transatlantic slave trade.
All right, let's go to Moray Yvdoc. Go ahead.
Okay, peace and blessings once again. I can't speak for the One West perspective, and neither would I want to speak for the One West perspective because I let people speak for themselves. I think those who are amongst them should probably be the ones to identify, why they believe what they believe. But I can tell you about what I teach my congregation. As we come back, I said this earlier, we're reclaiming our identity. Assimilating with foreign cultures, we picked up strange ways. So it became necessary to identify the strange ways of the nations that God told us not to pick up. So you will get people who say things like, and I can see the perspective, why would you drink blood? We were never a people who drank blood. As a matter of fact, God commanded us not to drink any manner of blood. And also it's important for us to understand the history of the people. The reason why there's a level of mistrust for Africans to a degree, quote unquote Africans, and I agree with the brother Divine Prospect, that you do have to drill down. You do have to understand further what people were doing, because when we look at our history, you had the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, that they had strange practices that God warned us. He said, the people of the land do all of these things. The people of the land, not only did they drink blood, they had illicit relationships. They were down with sleeping with their aunts and their mothers. They were burning their children in the fire. They were doing all those things. And God said, don't be like them. So as we reclaim our identity, it was like, hey, listen, this is what you got to look out for. This is what they do. Actually not too far from what we do here in America, where we stop and we look at other nations and we say, no, we're not like them. Just because they eat calf brain, that doesn't mean we eat calf brain. Just because they eat cow tongue, that doesn't mean we eat cow tongue. That's their delicacy. That's not ours. And so a lot of times I stop and I say once again, it's taught from the perspective of hatred as opposed to taught from the perspective in the lens of individuality. I don't wear my pants tight, but there are people amongst my own people who wear their pants tight. And there are people of a certain sexual orientation of males that wear their pants tight for the reason that they wear it. We make the distinction. And it's okay to make a distinction. It's okay to be an individual. We're not a people who shave our faces bare. God commanded us not to. So whether we wear our beard low or whether we wear a long beard, that's our culture. It's okay because we're not like you. But I said oftentimes when people stop and say, oh, now that you're trying not to be like me, you must hate me. And that's wrong. That's the ignorant part of this all. Because I'm not like you, I hate you. Because I walk a different way, because I talk a different way, then there's something wrong. And that's not right. I have the right to remain my individuality, to remain in my individuality, the same way you have the right to remain in your individuality. You stay in your culture, and I stay in mine. You play your position, and I play mine. Africa doesn't all have bad things. We're not saying the only people in the world that can live are Israelites, but we serve God. And if you want to serve God with us, then so be it. And if you don't want to serve God, then you deal with the repercussions of that. But to understand what we have to do and sharing a continent and sharing a space and understanding what's happening in that space. Listen, Eber was a person. I'm going to say this quickly. Eber was a man. We're not all saying we descended from that man Eber in the Hebrew word. Ivrim is a term. All Hebrews are not Israelites. Not all Hebrews are Israelites. There are people who descended from Abraham who are Hebrews who are not Israelites. Israel is a nation that should dwell on its own. So in us maintaining our individuality, I want us to understand this. We have to make a distinction of who we are so we can understand what God has in store for us as a people. Peace and blessings.
All right, we're gonna get a response from Duane and Quete, and after that, we're gonna get go to the audience and hear what they got to say, and after that, we're gonna pretty much wrap it up and get some last words from everybody on the panel. But let's go to Duane. Duane, go ahead.
All right, y'all. All right, so I'm gonna be quick here for time's sake. There's really 2 points that I have, and that is this: is that there's a lot of debate and distinction being made between us as Israelites, all right, and the children of Ham, the Hamites. And what we have to understand is you can go from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob and claim, okay, there was some type of direct lineage where we kind of kept it in the family. But after Jacob and all his sons, you have the root being Hebrew Israelites. But those sons, oftentimes, like Judah, married Canaanites. So we have Hamitic blood that is still running through our veins. So to try to be like, the issue is not so much about the bloodline. The issue is about the covenant that rests upon us as Hebrew Israelites, Torah. So ultimately, it's up for us as Hebrew people to come back to Torah. Come back to Torah in Christ, because Christ came to fulfill the law, not do away with the law. And so we could talk about everything else, but ultimately what it comes down to is, as an Israelite, man and woman and child, are we united in Torah in Christ? Last thing I want to say is, what are we doing? This goes for myself, Brother Sal. I know you got this working out beautifully for you here, all right? The other panelists and those of you listening on social media and on the line, what are we doing to connect with our brothers and sisters that are in Africa? Because we came from them. We can't get hung up on Africa and the Hamites and everything else. We have to be united as one remnant, united in Torah, united in Christ. And I'm taking a step further. Beyond us, we are a royal priesthood, right? So therefore, you got Christians, Gentile Christians, that are looking They're looking for the truth. They're looking for us to rise up and awaken to who we are so that they can cast off the deception and the false doctrines and the paganism that they've been subjected to. They may have found Christ as Messiah, but we were all birthed into deception, birthed into a lie, and we have to come to the realization of who we are as a Hebrew Israelite people, as an Eve people. Beyond us, we got the rest of the world looking at us. We got the Gentile Christians. We got even the Messianic Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews that know they ain't the real people, but they know who Messiah is. We are that royal priesthood. All right? So there's going to be others that are going to be trying to cleave to us, like it says in Revelations. They're going to be cleaving to us. So what are we doing to, number one, waking up our brothers and sisters as who we are as a total people, as Israelites? And what are we doing to connect with our Hebrew, our Eve people in Africa that want to know the truth? I can't tell you how many emails and responses I've received of people that are crying out for more knowledge and understanding of who they are. They Eve people in Africa, and they don't have some of the knowledge that we have over here. But we don't have some of the knowledge they have over there. So we, as a united Eve people, no matter where you reside, need to come together and get this together. No more strife, no more division, no more games, because God is raising up this remnant, and it's time for us to raise up and become who we've been called to be, a royal priesthood. That's it.
All right, I'm gonna let Aqueta respond, but just letting you know we have like 3 minutes on the air, family. If you're listening on the internet, we're gonna go into the overtime part of the show, so you're gonna have to call in to hear the rest of the show live. All we're gonna do once we get Aqueta's response, we're gonna go to the audience out there, get some of your questions, and then we're gonna pretty much get some last words from everybody on the panel. So again, feel free to call in before the time runs out. Call in via phone or via Skype if you want to hear the rest of the show live. Other than that, check out the archives, go to the iTunes podcast, go to the YouTube page, and of course, we're on Instagram, Facebook, everything Debate Talk V Radio. We appreciate you guys. Aquete, you can respond.
Thank you, Sal. I'll be quick and very short. All I want my brothers in the Americas to know, or every brothers across the globe, is that your brothers in Africa, we want to get together so that we'll become one people like we were. We are willing to work with each other. The question is, will you accept us as your brothers, as your sisters, as your kinsmen? Nobody determines who is Hebrew or who is not. The Most High determines that. If you claim Hebrew, well, let's get back to the Torah. That's the main thing. The Torah is what binds us together. The Torah is what we're supposed to study, know it back and front. The Torah is what we're supposed to keep. If someone claims Israel and they're not, do I care? That's not my responsibility. The Most High will take care of that. My main responsibility is to let my people know you are the ancient Eves, and what we need to do next is to come back to Torah so that our pains and our toils, we can start rectifying them. So we are coming to you with open arms as brothers, as kinsmen, if you would accept us so we can start working together. Thank you.
All right, so let's go to the phone lines. Being that we're in the overtime part of the show, you're going to simply press number 1 if you have a question, and then we're going to go to you guys, and please make it brief as possible, for the sake of time. But let's go to the first person. Let's go to 757-309. Live in air.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're loud and clear. You're loud and clear. Yep,
okay.
you're good.
I might be off topic, but I really have a question that's been pushing me away from the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, I was asked a question about my grandmother, whose father was white and with no fault of her mother. And they tell me that she's an Edomite and that she's going to be a servant in the kingdom. And to me, that doesn't even make sense at all. Can someone please answer that? if I can ask that. I know it might not be what the topic is.
Yeah, let's see if we go to let's go to Moray Yiftach. You want to answer that? Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm here. So I actually question how they've made the determination that your father's an Edomite. However, if indeed your father is an Edomite and your mother, I'm presuming they're saying is an Israelite. I don't think
I'm black. I was asking for it was my grandmother who was half white. Her father was white and her mother was black, and they're telling me that she would be considered an Edomite and will be a servant in the kingdom, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Hold on, okay. So
yeah.
What I'm saying to you is, and just hear me through. If indeed it's factual that your father or your bloodline comes from an Edomite and you are an Edomite, and that although your grandmother or who you identify down the line is black, whatever that means.
Well, my grandmother is mixed.
What I'm telling you, hold on, hear me. What I'm telling you is, from our understanding, you are whatever your father is. So seed travels through the man, and so whatever your father is, that's who you are. So if your father's an Edomite, then you're an Edomite. So to answer your question, according to our understanding from the Holy Scriptures, and that may more be common to you from the Old Testament, according to the book of Obadiah, that nation will be destroyed. Also, in the Holy Scriptures, it teaches us that it says those who have enslaved you will become your slaves. So that's where they may be getting the understanding from. And I follow the Holy Scriptures, so I find that to be an absolute, and I'm in agreement with it, provided that what you're saying is factual. I don't know how they came to the fact that you're an Edomite, but if indeed that's what it is, you can reference the book of Obadiah, and the Most High God said that He would destroy that nation for what He did to us as a people, for what they did to us as a people.
Then we'll let one more person respond to that before we move on to the next question. Let's see. Let's go to Duane Harris. You want to respond to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to respond to that. All right. So this is what it comes down to for me. Things that are said and done out of bitterness, out of hatred, out of anger for the atrocities that have been placed upon our people by the quote-unquote white man that many camps try to say is Esau or Edom. And I've done a lot of extensive research on this. I won't go too much into it right now in regards to who's who in the zoo in regards to that. But the bottom line is this, is that the quote-unquote white people, many of the quote-unquote white people were used, okay, and they were a victim on the flip side of a deception that made them feel more superior and important than they were. They were nothing more than pawns in the game, a greater game than most of us can recognize and realize. When it comes to this issue of your great grandfather, I believe, okay, or your great grandfather and him being a slave and this, that, and everything else, myself and nobody else on this panel and nobody else in this world can speak about your bloodline and your family but you. And ultimately what it comes down to is, are we following Torah? Do we know the Most High Yah? Do we know the Messiah? Are we one in Messiah in the Torah? If we're not dealing with that basic question, then it don't matter about none of this stuff. I'm telling you right now, you could be a 99.99% every Israelite man or woman. And if you are not under the Torah and Messiah, you're going to have some problems. You may hear some Lord, Lord, you know, and depart from me, I never knew you action. Because you didn't have love in your heart. Because you were too worried about subjugating somebody else than operating in the love of Yah, operating in Torah. So we don't need to be worried, concerned about who's who, because there's many people in these camps that haven't even got a DNA test. They haven't even tried to see by our own human standards who's they or not. They might end up being some Hamites and don't even know it. They may find that their Y DNA haplotype goes back to the R1B, Euro. So we don't need to be even talking about the end times and the by and by, and somebody's going to be somebody's servant or slave, and how they want to define that slavery or servanthood. Because I just want to make it in the kingdom. Because before I knew I was an everyday Israelite, I was a proud black Christian, submitted under Messiah, trying to learn all I could about the Bible, forward and backwards. Now the revelation is happening. Now the awakening is happening. You got Christians, Gentile Christians, waking up to the fact that, wait a minute, we've been lied to and deceived. 2016 was the year of disclosure and exposure. The entire world system of this satanic Luciferian world was being exposed. The truth is coming out. And even to this day, the truth of who we are as a everyday Israelite people is coming to light. So we don't need to be concerned about, do you know the Torah? Have you received Messiah as your Lord and Savior? That's the primary question we need to be asking. Not talking about in the by and by who's going to be somebody's slave or servant. That's all I got to say.
All right, family, this is your time. If you have any questions or comments, we're in the overtime part of the show. Simply press number 1. You know, if you're calling in via phone or via Skype, just press number 1. That lets me know that you have a question, and we'll let, you know, anybody from the panel, you know, answer as best as possible. Other than that, we can pretty much get some final words from the special guests on the panel. Like I said, I definitely appreciate everybody that's here. You know, when we put it out there in the archives, of course, we get a lot of comments, a lot of feedback as usual, and we welcome the feedback. We appreciate you guys. Again, let's let y'all know this is the last week for the summer special. We have a show actually tomorrow, and on Monday will be the final show. And for those that are new to the show, the regular season is going to begin Friday, September 29th, family. Friday, September 29th, we're going to have season 8 of Debate Talkie Radio. Make sure you tune in from Monday to Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But again, we're trying to look at the phone lines to see if anybody else have any questions. Just press number 1, and we'll bring you in. All right, I don't see nobody else pressing number 1 at this time. So let's get some final words. All right, so let's go to my brother, Ron Divine Prospect. Like I said, I appreciate you. I know you're a busy brother, but I'm glad you came through. Any last words you wanted to say to the people? You have 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me on Sal Showtime. I wish I had more availability. I would definitely be on a lot more shows, but I do intend to set some time aside to definitely grace this platform, because I learn a lot every time I come on to it. Even tonight, I've learned a lot from my fellow brothers that were speaking on the line. My closing words would say we need to improve our methodology of research. Our research methodology within our community has to improve, and it has to be as objective as possible, so that way we can take into account the worldview of the broader perspective of peoples, more particularly on the continent of Africa. This is why travel is very important. If anybody can save up the money who are so-called blacks and Negroes in America, if you can travel to the continent of Africa, I would encourage you to travel to the continent of Africa. And if you can't travel for whatever reason, I would encourage you to get in contact and in touch with people that actually live there on the continent, because only through that type of experience will you be able to fully identify with the worldview and the lens of those people there. And I think 80% of issues can be resolved through diplomacy, through tact, and through objectivity. And if we decide that we are going to be teachers of this truth, we have to have those elements under our belt. Otherwise, we are going to be no better than the oppressor who's oppressing us today, and we will be oppressing other people the same way that our oppressors oppressed us. The Most High did not intend for us to develop bitter feelings towards others. If you have a bitter heart, then something is wrong. You need to reevaluate your relationship with the Most High to see if you're in line with the Most High. If you believe that a particular atrocity was committed against you, we're not saying to advocate any kind of injustice, right? We're definitely going to remember that injustice. We're definitely going to speak on it. But when you take it a step further and allow it to make you bitter to the point where now you shut off all communication from anybody that may be associated from that stereotype that you are escaping from, avoiding because you felt an atrocity was done, then what you're doing is disenfranchising anybody else who could possibly be an ally or possibly come under the truth and under you, so that way you can expand your assignment from the Most High. So we have to be very diligent in our research methodology. We have to be very diligent in being diplomatic, and tactful when we're speaking about these type of subject matters, because if we're not, it's going to show a huge degree of naivety and ignorance to the people in the know, and you will come at odds with them. So, again, to summarize everything, Africa is not synonymous with no one tribe of people. Africa is not synonymous with the overarching phylum of peoples that have been broken down to what we consider Hamitic and Shemitic. Africa is not synonymous with it. It's a continent that had indigenous people, and over time you had migrations in and out the continent. Those people who identify themselves as being Shemitic and they have the customs to attest to it and they keep the meat to attest to it, they are acknowledged as being distinct from the other cultures. And again, because somebody has a separate culture than you does not make them altogether evil. The problem is the patron deity that entered a covenant with your forefathers, you are entitled to the blessings and the promises if you keep the covenantal agreement and you engage in the indigenous culture, not the post-exilic culture, the indigenous culture. And once you engage in indigenous culture, there is a method of salvation for you. But the Most High has universal laws in which he utilizes to judge the other nations. And depending upon certain individuals within those nations, it would drive them to cleave unto the every people, and therefore they can learn of our customs, our traditions, and of the Torah, and they will be our deity. But outside of us, every other culture has their own method of salvation. They have their own customs, their own traditions. And by us understanding what those things are, we can understand the distinctions between the two. But at the same time, if those individuals are not in contact with our culture, we can't damn them from afar. The Most High has to judge them. And we have to be very clear on that. My brother JC, and I'll say this real quick, reverberated, mentioned that the text only speaks about the Libya, Mizraim, Ham, in regards to the Sudanese, Ethiopians, or what we say Cushite peoples, the Canaanites. These are the peoples that the biblical scribes actually encountered and that they knew about. Anybody else in the interior of Africa, other parts of Africa, they were not unable to identify because they did not know those people. They didn't come into contact with them. So we would be doing a disservice to them if we don't further study to acknowledge other distinctions, other similarities before we cast judgment. So like I said, before you pick up that stone to throw it, see if you're in a glass house or not, because otherwise everything will come tumbling down on you when the Most High comes to judge. With that, I say peace and shalom.
All right, shalom, man. We appreciate you, my brother. Appreciate you for coming out. Let's go to my brother Equete. Equete, the last words. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, everybody. I enjoyed the show today, and I'm hoping, like I said, we could work together. We have focused on the scriptures for so long. Now let's get boots on the ground. We have the technology. We have the means. Let's save some money. Let's travel. Please sit with the elders. Let the elders teach you. They have so much wisdom, so much history. Reach out to them on social media. Pick up the phone and call. They are willing to talk to us. They don't want to die with the wealth of knowledge. Some of them cannot write. They would have written books. Some of them have written books, but they're in their local dialect. I have a bunch of them. Let's interact with each other. Reach out to your brothers on the continent of Africa and teach them what you know, because you have access to so much access to information because of the internet. Yes, we do have internet, but we don't turn it on 24/7 and walk away. You have information, we have information. Let's come back together and piece the puzzle together so that we can rebuild this nation. Thank you all for your time.
I appreciate you, Akwete, and of course, Duane, being that you're on the same phone line. Last words from you, brother. We appreciate you as well. Last words, guys.
Hey, I wanted to say, I love everybody here on the panel. Those of you listening, support Brother Sal in this great ministry work that he's doing. After I get off the line here, I plan on also donating to the cause and to the radio show, because it's important for our people, and even those that are Gentiles that are listening in, because they are listening in, to know this truth. And what Brother Akwete said is very important. Putting money behind this thing. I'm not just talking about it. I'm putting money behind this thing. Time, effort, energy, all that. We need to get our Hebrew every artists together to create books, to write books, to create artwork that depicts us as who we really are. We need to tell our story, because the world is waiting for our story, and we are waiting for each other's stories. I want to go to West Africa. I want to learn from the elders. There's things that I don't know, and I'm proud to tell and explain that and be humble that I don't know everything, and I'm willing to learn. I want to continue learning and growing, and what I do know, I want to freely share and give. There's books and encyclopedias and hidden history and hidden facts that we just don't know about, because no one's going to tell our story but us. And Yah has woken each and every one of us up for a reason. There's a reason why the call of Yah has been on your life to a child. And so we need to support one another. Regardless of what our differences may be, we can work that out. Yah will correct that, however he chooses to do that. But I need to get connected with my brothers state to state. I don't preach hate. I don't preach hate racism. I support love, the love of Yah, and obedience to Torah as best as we can do it, knowing that we have a high priest. So I just call on everybody to work together, to reach out, to pick up the phone, to send an email. Don't let days and weeks go by without contacting one of us, because we need to reach out to our people. Because once we recognize and acknowledge who we are as a people, we will be unstoppable. And on top of that, God will be able to do the final work he is doing in this hour. I don't want to go 40 years around the mountain, okay? We're going to do this right and get it tight and do it now. So if I got to spend $50 a month, if that's going to help to this ministry to help get the word out to people, to reach people, to advertise, if I got to invest $50 into Akwete's ministry so that his videos go far and wide all over the world, my own videos, that's what I'll do. If I got to write and make my own audio books that speak about our history, that's what I'm going to do. If we got to pay somebody in Africa to translate these great books of knowledge into each other's tongues, that's what we got to do. So all I'm saying is it's time for us to support one another financially, emotionally, spiritually, in Torah, in Christ, the Messiah. That's my final word.
All right, Duane, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate both of you guys. Of course, everybody on the panel. Much love to everybody. I appreciate you. Let's get some last words from my brother, JC. JC, last words, guys.
All right, peace. Like Divine said, I learned a lot from everybody on the line. For the most part, I think we all pretty much agree. We just have variations of the same thing. We're basically saying the same thing all day. It would have been good to have some of the anti-African brothers on to deal with them. And a lot of times they're hard to deal with due to how they deliver their message. But I would love to talk to some of them. I mean, I know some of them, but they avoid me like the plague. Because I don't, certain things I don't tolerate. I don't tolerate disrespect for cultures, no matter if it's African culture or Indian culture. I don't tolerate disrespect for cultures. Because outside of being a researcher for Hebrew history, I love history, period. And I know how important it is to learn history as much as you can. So when you go out into the world and you interface with people, you can kind of deal with them on a certain level. You can't go around mocking people's cultures. That's not cool. But mainly Africa. Whenever I see them post something on Facebook that I know is dead wrong, I'm on them. And I normally get blocked within a day. But yeah, like Duane said, methodology is important. Like we gotta tighten up the methodology. We gotta understand the different disciplines of understanding the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? Textual criticism, learning language. We gotta revise the accepted doctrines. There's no reason why in 2017 I should be telling the Hebrew Israelite what the word Ham means. That's basic. Or who are the Hamites? That's basic. We shouldn't be having this discussion at all, especially coming from people who have Hebrew names on their Facebook page. Come on. We can do better than that. Also, too, stepping away from the whole Deuteronomy 28:68 and the whole Deuteronomy thing. You can still have it. It's good for a certain application, and that application is biblical hermeneutics. But for those whose gift is to be a researcher or a scholar of the people, we got to ramp it up. We can't keep repeating from Babylon to Pt.2, only reading one page of that book. That's an awesome book from front to back. I don't know why we only quote one page. Like things like that. We got to be more meticulous. We got to present ourselves as a nation and not a religious cult. I know a lot of Hebrews don't want to say, well, we're not a religion. Yeah, you are. You're religion. Whenever you can't accept people within your own nation for what they believe, you're religion. Yeah. So we gotta figure out a way where we can all. And I tried before. I reached out to almost every camp elder you can think of, Elder Ricard, Nathaniel. I reached out to everybody. I did a mass message to everybody, and only a couple of people responded, and they all responded and calling me a Hamite lover and a whole bunch of other rhetoric. Nobody wanted to sit down and try to revamp the doctrines, a historical standpoint. Nobody wanted to do that. And I was telling them, like I would tell y'all, if the doctrines don't get revamped, you're going to see a higher amount of black people who are not going to listen to anything that anybody has to say who says that they're a Hebrew Israelite. You're going to get people who call themselves Hebrew Israelites today who next week is not going to identify. They're not going to identify as such because they're going to find out that 98% of the doctrine is false, and every question they have can't be answered. So that's a big issue. A lot of them are going to stop even believing in the Most High. You know what I'm saying? So we don't want it to get that far. So those issues need to be addressed quickly. That's all I have to say.
All right, JC, we appreciate you. We'll try to keep in touch with everybody in the panel for future shows. Like I said, Season 8, y'all. Season 8. It's going to go down Friday, September 29th. Looking forward to Season 8. We got a lot of things in store. So keep it locked on the Pt.2 Radio. Like I said, I appreciate everybody on the panel and everybody that tuned in all over the globe, checking out the show. Last words, Moray, Doc, last words. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to take the time to thank my brother Sal for inviting me on the show again. I really like the topic. I really like what you're doing, brother. Keep up the good work. And may God continue to bless your efforts to teach this people. This is what I'm going to say in departing. As a people, we have to realize that we cannot leave God out of the equation. God put us in this situation, and only God is going to take us out of this situation. And if we think for one moment that we're going to sing some songs and hold hands and God is going to bless us without returning back to his law, statutes, commandments, and judgments, then we're only fooling ourselves and we're doomed. There's a reason why it's said that only a remnant will return. And that remnant ideal is amongst different frames of thought, that in the end of days, that there will only be a remnant. And I want us to ask ourselves the question, why is that? Why does it keep saying only a remnant? Why is it saying there'll only be certain people? Listen, for all those who are still in the sound of my voice, every brother ain't a brother. Every people ain't for your goal. And everybody can't work together. We will be unified as a people, as humanity under God. And the same way God came and purged the earth in the time of Noah, the same way God came and judged a nation in the time when the Israelites were in Egypt, and he gave over a people, is the same way he'll come and judge this earth again. And so what I'm saying is, if you serve the Most High God and you keep his laws, statutes, commandments, and judgments, fine. But call a spade and identify your enemy as an enemy. Don't sit down and tell me words of peace, healing the hurt of my people slightly, saying peace, peace, when there is no peace. Knowing that we're at war, knowing that people are trying to kill us, and knowing that people want to keep us ignorant. Yeah, we can sit down and say everything will be okay. But current history should tell you, we've been saying everything's going to be all right for a couple of decades now, and everything still ain't all right. It's time for us to return. It's time for us to reclaim our identity. It's time for us to reclaim our God, and it's time for us to get to the business of nation building. And I'm not saying that we can't do that with other nations. King Solomon worked with other nations, and at the same time, too, he destroyed those who were his enemies. He maintained his individuality, and he never called himself something other than what he was, and that's an Israelite. I really hope y'all got something out of what was said this day. Prayerfully, my words reach the people that will make them want to understand more about who we are and the way that we can serve him, and look deeper into prophecy and where we're headed as a people, and that the Most High God may bless us all. Peace and blessings to you.
Out of Israel, the man, the land, relation, peace we embracing, streets be adjacent, exile files, hot not mild, like Powell style, always show a smile profile, lit like a candle, subscribe the channel, holy words flow out of my mouth like Daniel, love not hate will make us a better nation, this is why we debate, get a revelation, get organized, then we authorize, bring the King James Version cause it's authorized, King Arthur sword, shade fuzz off the sides, got pride like a lion in my awesome tribes. Everywhere we amazing, debate talk for you is my favorite station. Shekels in the side, Jekylls when I hide, cause the squad like a bird that speckle when it flies. Get the real deal, research in the field, cause you know that man upset you when he lied. Make the mind get enhanced, matter of fact, thank Showtime in advance.
With free next-day delivery from Staples, you can run your business like a pro. You can guarantee the marketing department that they'll get their supplies tomorrow and guarantee the accounting department that they'll be delivered free. With free next-day delivery, you'll have the ability to move deadlines up and adjust budgets down. Go to Staples.com and get the office essentials you need delivered next day for free. Staples. It's pro time. Orders over $49.99. Placed by 5 p.m. Excludes weekends and holidays. Eligible items only.